So, today we are going to be going over what caused the rise of East Asian media in the West. So, what are we looking to cover today? Well, today I'm planning on going over Nintendo, the gaming giant of Japan, anime, its creation and how it came to be, K pop, the evolution and the break into the Western market, and the toxic idolisation of countries such as Japan and South Korea. Now, what do I mean when I say the West? Well, when I say the West, the old definition would be countries influenced by Christianity and Greek and Roman civilizations, also influenced by the Renaissance era, the Protestant Reformation, and the Age of Enlightenment. But when we look at a more modern day definition, the West is more of a culture due to the immigration of Europeans into other countries. So, when we're looking at a Western market, we're looking at countries such as the Americas, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. So, to start off, we're going to go over the history of Nintendo. Now, Nintendo was originally founded in 1889 in Kyoto, Japan, and originally started out by making Japanese playing cards. In 1933, an early version of the company was established, and this would be the start of the Nintendo Revolution. Now, in 1963, the company rebranded and then became not just Nintendo as we know it today. This was also when they started manufacturing games alongside their cards. And of course, in 1986, Nintendo released the NES system, which would be the start of their rise in consoles. So, looking at the console history of Nintendo, they have released 25 consoles over 33 years, showing that there is a large demand from Nintendo for consoles. Nintendo boasts a game library of over 500 plus games from simply just some of their earlier consoles. Handheld consoles is what boosted the popularity of Nintendo in countries such as America and Great Britain, with a lot of children starting out with a Game Boy or a Nintendo DS. Now, in modern day, Nintendo remains a leader within the portable gaming consoles, again with the Nintendo DS selection and with their more recent launches, the Switch. Now, how did Nintendo actually manage to take the West the way they did? Well, in 1983, it just so happens that there was a video game crash which mostly hit the USA but still hit quite a few of the European countries. Now, this was caused by market saturation. There was too many companies simply making too much at once. A lot of the larger companies lost their publishing control due to employees leaving and creating their own smaller companies in which they started publishing their own games, taking all the power away from big companies. And the competition from growth of home computers. This was when desktops in the home were starting to become more and more popular and games were appearing on these desktop computers. However, Nintendo managed to defy this crash and still sold millions of units in games and in consoles, showing that Nintendo was the main leader in this department at the time. There was still a huge consumer interest in what we now think of as the classics, games such as Super Mario, The Legend of Zelda, Animal Crossing, these games which still live on and are still being made today, showing that Nintendo was greatly ahead of its time and greatly ahead of all of its contenders. Now, although there is a mass media for Nintendo, we do find that Nintendo does have a small issue with race inclusivity. There is quite a lack of POC characters. A lot of their main characters, and a large majority of them really, are white looking characters. And the few POC characters are usually villains. The best example I can think of is Ganon from The Legend of Zelda. And when we look at the game Animal Crossing in earlier games, if you wanted to get a dark skin tone, you had to leave your character out in the sun for a few days so your character would become sunburnt or have a darker skin tone. Even in some newer games, there is still a lack of diversity. However, they are working better to add more diversity into their games, such as the newest game in the Zelda series, Breath of the Wild. We have a whole race of desert people who are POC, and it shows that Nintendo is working on their diversity issue. Now, next up, we will be looking at the history of anime. Anime really started from a single advert in 1917. This animation was made on a chalkboard and was done by simply rubbing out the drawings and redrawing them. These videos tended to be no longer than 5 minutes, with one artist, Osamu Tezuka, becoming the blueprint of what anime is today due to his post-war animes breaking barriers of styles and trends. We can still see his style throughout anime and throughout various mangas to this day. So, looking at anime on TV from a UK standpoint, my generation and possibly millennials as well grew up with a lot of anime on the TV in the 2000s. The likes of Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Sailor Moon were very popular Japanese shows that were shown on British TV on the likes of CITV and had been dubbed into English for easier viewing. Now, these are still huge popular franchises today, with Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading cards seen in a lot of supermarkets and game shops because of the popularity. Pokemon still going on TV to this day with a lot of popular games from Nintendo, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Still not going as strong as Pokemon, but still a fan favourite to many. Now, the importance of these TV shows being showed in the West really helped to inspire a whole new generation of shows and helping to boost the animated TV market even more than it already had been over here in the West. And the art style was a heavy form of influence for a lot of artists today. Now we're going on to look at anime studios, who are the sole reason that anime is still being created today and one of the reasons why anime is doing so well over here in the West. Starting with some of the top studios on the market, we have Madhouse, UFO Table, Studio Bones and Wit Studio. Some of these having created some of the top animes of all time, like Attack on Titan and Demon Slayer. Now, however, see an upcoming star being Mappa. Now, Mappa is run by a former Madhouse employee who is challenging the intricacy of anime to this day, creating shows such as Jujutsu Kaisen, Yuri on Ice, and getting the rights to do the last series of Attack on Titans. Now, Mappa focuses greatly on large, detailed fight scenes with so much going on, more than you would see in any other animes, really, giving a huge boost in the Western market due to these amazing intricacies. The Western market has greatly loved a lot of the shows that Mappa has created, Jujutsu Kaisen being one of their newest animes, which got huge success after it was streamed on the streaming app Crunchyroll. Now, when we look at streaming for animes, we use a lot of sites such as Crunchyroll and Netflix, which pays for these top studios to stream on their sites. Now, if we're looking at one of the largest studios of all time, that would be Studio Ghibli, having success in Japan and globally. Studio Ghibli is a mass fan favourite with movies such as Howl's Moving Castle and My Neighbour Totoro. having these wonderful hand-painted sceneries throughout all of their films, bringing global success with all of their coming-of-age stories resonating with a lot of people. However, when it comes to anime, we do see a lot of over-sexualization. When it comes to female characters, there is a lot of lack of character development lack of character development in female characters due to them simply being there to give a sexualized element, usually with very slim bodies, tall physiques, and larger chested areas. These characters are usually seen in skimpier outfits with a lot of revealing characteristics and will usually have their outfits torn off their body at some point. We don't see the same treatment given to male characters, however. It is only female characters which have to deal with this, and it also seems to be female characters who are also minors are not out of the question. We do see younger characters with much more womanly figures than they should have. This is partially down to the popularity of the schoolgirl look in Japanese culture. A lot of older men in Japanese culture like to sexualise the look of young girls in their school uniforms, which is a toxic part of Japanese culture and has led into anime. It's not across all animes, of course, it is mostly these shoujo animes, which are coming of age action animes with a male lead protagonist who usually has some beautiful woman on his side who has a lack of character development but is simply there just for the eye candy. Now, moving on, we're going to be looking at K-pop, the beginnings of how it became. In 1987, after the Korean War, the government reformed in order to loosen content restrictions on music, on TV and film. This led to the creation of Sojitajian Boys, the first K-pop group. They were inspired by Western hip-hop and R&B sounds and brought that over to the Korean music scene. It was the first music of its type to ever be shown on Korean TV. They debuted in 1992 with their first song, I Know, and it rose to success very quickly. Now, a former member of this group went on to create the group YG Entertainment, which in the modern day is still a very large company that holds a lot of power in the industry. However, the giant of the K-pop industry, SM Entertainment, was founded in 1989 and is Korea's largest entertainment company to this day. Now, how did the Western popularity come about for K-pop? Well, it all seems to start with Gangnam Style, which was the most viral K-pop video that we had ever seen. Gangnam Style topping charts globally in 2012. This was a huge success for Psy and led him to one-time fame. We haven't seen much from Psy get this popular ever since. However, in 2016-2017, BTS flew to the top of success. BTS becoming one of the most popular boy groups of their time and setting records constantly, with winning awards to selling out arenas. We also have groups such as Monsta X, who went on to start releasing English versions of their Korean songs, but also writing a whole English album that released and got a lot of Western attention, growing their fan base very much. We now see companies such as SM Entertainment creating groups for a Western market, their main group being Super M, which is made up of 7 of their most talented members who are part of other groups, this group being marketed towards the West and not their Korean market. We also see a lot of companies pushing their idols to do more global concerts, most of these being in America, but we do also see concerts within Europe and the UK. However, there is a heavy amount of mistreatment within the K-pop industry. Most of these idols have given up their childhood in order to be trained by top companies in the hopes that they will debut. However, a lot of companies, when their idols debut, their idols do indeed owe them money due to their training costs, and a lot of idols will never make money before their group disbands if they do not gain a lot of popularity. We find that some companies give their idols unfit living conditions, squeezing too many trainees into such a small apartment, giving them not much room to share, with multiple trainees living in one bedroom at once. And due to the also heavy competitive environment of this, it leads to a lot of toxic behaviours from some idols, and a lot doing whatever they can in order to be the one to debut. Once they have debuted, it is aimed for them to come across as the perfect person, the perfect boyfriend, the perfect girlfriend, have no flaws, which often leads to a lot of idols coming under fire when they're seen hanging out with the opposite gender or they are caught smoking. Most of the hate for them for these reasons coming from the Korean market. We do find that a lot of idols struggle with mental and physical health issues due to the pressure put on them, and a lot of females having physical health issues due to the unfit diets that they are put on in order to keep them stick thin. Now, moving on to the toxic idolisation of countries such as Japan and Korea. We find that a lot of fans have these dream ideologies of Japan and South Korea and think that they're dreamlands due to their completely different cultures. However, it could not be much different. When you look at both of these countries, due to how fast that they grew into the modern world, a lot of their views are still stuck in what in the Western world would be seen as early 20th century views, often what we would see around the wartime. They can be quite unwelcoming to foreigners who travel to their country. However, this is not seen as much in younger people, it is more in elders. These false realities make it seem like the perfect place to move to and live. However, for a lot of people that can be quite untrue. And we also find a lot of girls who go to South Korea and they look for their dream boyfriends who are like their idols, but will often just find Korean men who simply want to use foreign girls. So thank you for listening to my presentation. In conclusion, we have seen that each of these different industries have grown and become their own over time, some earlier than others, some not so long ago. Each have their ups and their downs. Either way, a lot of us still greatly enjoy their content.